Welcome to the Black Lion Masterclass. In today's video I'm going to teach you one of the most aggressive setups with black pieces against the first move e4. This is just the preview of my course about Black Lion opening. I'm going to leave the link in the description if you want to check it out. Today we are discussing after e4 d6, d4 knight f6. This is our setup how we are reaching the Black Lion. If you don't know what is Black Lion, the first upcoming setup, you need to start with these two move order. And then after knight c3, which defends the pawn on e4, then we play the move knight from b to d7 to establish the connection with an e5 break. After knight f3, they're putting the knights into the game. Now we push the e5. One of the most played moves for white here is to get out with bishop and strikes the f7 pawn as natural moment of the game. After this happens, we need to play the move bishop to e7, because if we play anything else, the c6 as one move and the part of this course, they have the move knight g5. So c6 we are playing later, but firstly we are doing the move bishop e7. After castles, we are playing the move c6. We are vacating the square for our queen and also supporting the idea of b5, b4, so we can target the knight and also threaten to capture an e4. They should stop it with a4, stopping b5. Queen c7, developing queen, and you're maybe noticing that we are not castling immediately, which already gives some intentions. You'll see why. Rook e1, h6. This is a great prophylactic move, stopping any bishop g5, any knight g5 in future, and also contains some idea that you will see in a very short. a5, gaining more space. Knight f8. We are planning to regroup the knight to g6 to support the pawn this way and also to control additional f4 square here. After the move h3, white noticed that he needs to stop before he goes bishop e3 any sort of knight g4 or bishop g4. That's what annoys white in this position. But then here comes g5. This is our standard setup and the beginning of Black Lion opening. That's why we play this, and that's why we don't castle. After going bishop e3 and ignoring our attack, we are positioning the knight on g6 and slowly planning to come on f4. With this great outpost, we are achieving tremendous attack on the kingside. After bishop f1, trying to control more kingside, also to get out of some d5 threats, we are safely planting our knight and fixing the knight on f4, where we are now provoking white to take. Just to tell you, whenever they take this knight, we are always taking back with g pawn and opening the g line for our rook so we can attack the king. There is a lot of ideas as you see on the board. Of course, they are not taking, they decide to regroup the knight on d2, for example. There is a lot of options for white here. We're going to check a couple of them in this video. And now bishop d7. Rook g8 was more precise most probably here, planning to strike already with g4, but bishop d7 I wanted maybe to make an option for castles later. Knight c4 and now rook d8. The point of this move is to put some tension on the d-line, so if any trade happens, so I have some ideas already of bishop takes h3 and some discoveries on queen. That's why my opponent put a queen on f3, but also queen on f3 ran into some g4 ideas, which again opens the g-line. I played the move rook g8, pointing out on g4, and now my opponent decided to take on e5. I took back with the pawn. Now the queen is not on d1, but my rook is useful here. And now my opponent take on a7. This pawn is just not important. We don't look at this pawn at all. With this, now we just start attack. Here comes the fire. g4. They need to react. If they don't take, we're gonna take on h3. So maybe it's better for them to take. Of course, we take back with bishop since it's coming with tempo, and now we put a pressure on queen. Now it's the problem for them. They cannot go g3 because we got some discovery attacks and attacks on the queen. Queen moves on e3, trying to stay connected with bishop and planning maybe to go bishop e6. That's why I played the move queen c8, step out of the potential pin, and also planning to maybe go bishop h3. Knight takes e5, the pawn sacrifice, which I maybe didn't expect it from my opponent, because now I need to protect my knight on f4 and also including one more piece to the attack. This also opens the diagonal for my bishop. You can see that all black pieces are looking into the white's king. Everything looks at the white's king except the rook on d8. Bishop b6, we just ignore that. Bishop h3. We don't need the rook on d8. We are not threatening to take on g2 and already open the g line where potential checkmate threats will happen. g3, and now by playing the move g3, my opponent created light square weaknesses. Of course, I'm going to eliminate the defender over the light squares, the bishop, and after rook takes, I'm going to plant my queen on h3. Thanks to my rook on g8, the knight is never hanging, so I'm now threatening one-time checkmate. The only move to defend is queen to f3, and now final sauce. Knight takes g3. Pawn takes g3, rook takes g3. At least we are getting the queen. King f2, queen h3 check, king moves to e3, and our rook, which I told you that it's not useful, finally becomes a useful piece because it's providing the checkmate. And that's it. It's over. You see how much we put the effort with our minor pieces and also the rook on g8 to provide the threats on the king. By the way, if they take here with queen, then we just simply take, and after king h1 we have queen g2. Very simple checkmate. That was the first game. The second game I want to show you is here. What happens after g5 if white goes knight h2? This is a different game. I don't want to go from the very beginning because it's the same setup pretty much as you see on the board. We're going to start from this diagram. Now my opponent played the move knight h2. So what he wants to bring the knight to g4, maybe, or just to avoid any g4 things by our pawn. Knight f8, and by going knight f8 we are again planning to regroup our knight to f4 square. Knight f1 by our opponent. I don't know in this part of the game where this knight goes. Like, I was thinking what he wants to go here, then again back to f3. That would be funny, right? Or maybe he wants to go on e3 and then maybe to f5. But this looks very slow because we are very quick to the f4 square. And now my opponent planted his knight on f5. And whenever this happens, you are available to take with your bishop. And you should, actually. After e takes, I decided to make a short castle. Maybe it's a little bit out of our plan with rook g8, but I decided to do that because now I can also go king to h7 and then rook g8 later. The reason why they have the pawn on f5, so I don't really care about this diagonal. And since the e line gets open, I don't want my king in the center. While thinking that castling on the long side might be more riskier because they have some pawn breaks quicker than you would think. So that's why I castle short, and I think that's the right decision. Bishop f1, I decided to take on d4, queen takes to d4, and now to create this nice pawn chain together with bishop coming in to support the dark squares. My opponent went at g3, trying to kick my knight out of the way. I put the knight on h5, and then after h4, I put this knight on h7. Because I don't want to get this knight trapped, I also always want to have this spot for the knight here, and also I maybe want to vacate a square for the bishop on f6. Also opening the line, supporting the pawn, and attacking on h4. He took, I took back with a pawn, controlling still f4 square, really important. They played bishop d2, I bring the knight back to f6, bishop d3, and now bishop to d6. Finally, I just need to improve later this knight and my position will be brilliant. These bishops are very closed since both of them are aiming into the walls. One wall is their wall, one wall is mine wall. After king g2, the plan is clear for them. They would like to get the access over the h line. Now I put a pressure on the e line, and then I managed to push c5 and get the central control. While here these knights are looks very bad pieces, but at the same time they are providing safety to my king. In the center we see different things. Now my pawn's bishop are against these three minor pieces, where immediately they got some under big pressure. Finally, I managed to eliminate one of my knights and bring the other passive knight to the game, which already gives me advantage. They decided to put a queen on f3 and now g4, kicking the queen out of the way, and also bishop on e4 is hanging. After queen to g4, bishop on e4 is not really hanging, because if you take it, there is queen takes g4, and suddenly we can get checkmated, and also they're on their way to recapture the knight. So instead of that, I just captured g3, another tactic, and now I'm planning to recapture here with my rook. They decided to go rook h6, I took on e4, they took on f6, and after queen e5, preparing to put another rook to the game, attacking their rook, and also setting up some traps on f2 pawn. They went rook h6 back, rook e2 priority, and now they blundered checkmate. Queen h1, rook takes f2, king to g1, rook takes d2. Checkmate is coming by queen e3 and queen f2. There is no checkmate on h8 because our queen is also providing safety to our king. Game is over. That's how the game finished. The next game I want to show you is another of my games where we got similar position, where after rook e1 I played g5 and my opponent decided to grab more space on the queen side with a move a5, and now I played a move rook g8. So I didn't go now with the plan knight f8, knight g6. Overall, rook g8 plan is much more convenient, while knight f8 is more slower, but it's also very nice. g3 by my opponent, deciding to block any sort of pushes and to face g4 with a wall on g3. I decided to go knight f8 to open up my bishop and attack on h3. That's why they bring the bishop back to f1 in passivity, and now g4. The problem now of the move g3, you'll see that now they're pinned and they're facing difficulties with activating the queen. Bishop comes to g2, and now bishop becomes bad piece because he's anyway closed, deciding to protect the knight, providing safety to the king, but it's a little bit passive. h5, starting to push my pawn. Queen to d3, I decided now to take because I think this knight is important defender. If they manage to jump on h4, then my attack will be frozen. That's why I now eliminate this knight. They decided to implement firstly takes on e5, I take back with my pawn, and now they eliminate the bishop here. Finally, I push h4. I'm aiming to open up the G line, as you see. G takes h4, and now castles. Before I continue with my attack, I need to prepare the attack, so castling is perfect there because I'm going to stack the rooks later, and also my king feels more safe on c8. Bishop g5, pinning the knight, but this is not really a problem because after knight e6, our knight is not really hanging. If they decide to take, I will take back, and after queen takes, I have this wonderful move knight to f4, or we have this move knight to d4, where we are threatening a lot of stuff here, specifically here, and some sort of sacrifices followed by rook g8 and so on. But mainly we are threatening knight f4. Mainly we are threatening knight f4 to win this bishop. So that's why they went bishop h3, but now the bishop on g5 is pinned, so we don't worry about anything on f6. King b8, and after bishop takes e6, f takes e6. We ruined our pawn structure, but we know that this is not important thing to us because we are focusing on checkmate. So after king h1, we need to improve our other rook and also support the knight on f6. My opponent get out of the pin with queen h3, but now we are looking to plant the knight on f4. Already from this point here, the position of white is collapsing, and it's just a matter of time when white will receive checkmate. So they take the pawn on e6, we eliminate the bishop, they take it back, and now we plant the knight on f4. Queen g4 back to protect the pawn on g5, but after queen e7, we are threatening to take the pawn on g5 because we are simply attacking it with so many pieces. Trying knight e2, but after rook takes g4, queen h4 and rook h5, my opponent resigned because he's simply losing the queen, and more or less checkmate is coming in next few moves. As you see from these three games, this is a very sharp opening, and I'm really recommending if you try to if you want to try something new, dynamic, and something that will actually make your opponent suffer, and especially in the later preparation game, you will get a lot of ideas in tactics. So this course about Black Clan is in my description. This is just one preview how this opening looks like, and more deep information and analyzing variations all possible sidelines with model games and puzzles with 12 chapters of total 2 hours and 20 minutes are inside my course about Black Clan. You can take a preview. I'm gonna put a link down below, and I hope you like it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.